But McConnell still has leverage, and that, I think, political capital, especially in this particular political moment, is of vital importance.
Where does that leave the Speaker of the House who wants to lead the next effort?
I think I said this before, and I'll say it again. I think that she's done a remarkable job in terms of keeping her party united. But that said, Leader McConnell has been in power for quite some time. I would never count out McConnell or Pelosi. Pelosi is someone who grabbed the gavel back again. But traditionally, the shelf life of the Speaker of the House is fewer years rather, than that of the Majority Leader.
Mr. Cirilli. Great to catch up with you as always. Kevin Cirilli from down in Washington, D.C. Leader Cirilli on the road ahead. Tom, as the House and Senate get back to business May 4th.
We know we got 42 listeners coast to coast, okay? And if you take out the girlfriends, wives, and ex-wives, we're down to 12.
Here we go.
Okay, I've had 10 of those 12 people. People say, this is absolute garbage. Where is the check so I can survive? John, it's the polar opposite of what I hear from your United Kingdom.
There's a better way of starting this conversation, but let's run with it anyway. So to this point, I think this market is trading on the optics of some of these programs and less on whether they have been effective or not. And I think we need to think about the efficacy of them. How well have they hit their targets? I've been encouraged by how quickly this money has been distributed to businesses. I've been less than encouraged over small businesses fighting large businesses for the same pool of funds. And I think that's a problem we'll have to deal with coming out the other side.
Absolutely. Lakers got a check?
No,
that's honestly, the problem, Tom.
But there's another issue here, too, and this is emerging as another controversy, which is more than half of workers who have been laid off are receiving more in weekly payouts from governments than they had in their wages. So some business owners are saying it's hard to entice them back to their businesses in order for them to apply for the PPP loans because they have to have them on their payroll. So this is an extra sort of edge to this that's making it harder for some of the smaller businesses to get back up and running and get the money.
The unintended consequences on several fronts will be a topic of conversation, no doubt, over the next several weeks and several months on this program. Counting it down to the market open 2 hours away in New York City. Equity futures up at 35, call it 36. We're positive 1.24% from New York. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Caterpillar report.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
Casting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bout. The S&P 500 up nicely, up a little more than 1% and through 2,900, positive 37 points on a session. In the bond market, yields basically unchanged at 0.66% on a US 10-year. In foreign exchange, a quick snapshot of G10 for you. A dollar weaker against everything, against the majors. The euro advancing around about 0.5%. The attention once again on the crude market. Bring up the contract table. The pressure is on the June contract. The June contract is negative. July, August, September, October, November, December, all positive this morning, Tom. The story, the indexes, the ETFs rolling out of June, selling the June contract and going into July and beyond.
Before we bring in our esteemed guest, and she is really, really good at this, folks, please stay with us, Global Wall Street. John, I really want to parse landlocked or perceived landlocked Oklahoma American oil with those contracts you're talking about versus the floating global price Brent crude. John, I want you to explain how West Texas really doesn't exist in London, and that London, LME, all the commodity heritage of London is all about Brent, isn't it?
Well, landlock's the clue there, Tom, which is why they're two completely different oil markets. One is landlocked, the other can float in the ocean in big, big tankers, and that's why we have an $8-9 spread right now between WTI and Brent. The idea being that there is more places you can put Brent than there are where you can put WTI. Though I have to say, Brent is under its own pressure when it comes to storage too.
No question. We saw that this morning. We'll get to this. And, of course, Lisa's got some smart work here on the credit market in hydrocarbons as well. Right now, Amrita Sen joins us, Energy Aspects. She's wonderful on these dynamics. Amrita, if you were to publish this morning, what would you publish on the dynamics, the micro theory of demand in oil?
I think, demand April is going to be the worst month for demand we've seen probably ever for the oil market. But the good news is that we are going to come out of this, and you are starting to see social distancing measures ease in parts of Europe and the US. So it should get better from here.
Amrita, can we just get your thoughts on what is happening with some of the indexing around the crude market, and whether you think we've seen a total failure of some of these products to actually track the oil market? Because what I'm seeing on the screens today is just a big distortion because of what's happening with a single ETF.
Yes, and we've seen this in 2008 as well. This is not the first time, and back then the WTI contango widened out to $8, which is precisely why we had said for this year as soon as the demand had collapsed, and we could see these fund flows coming in, because a lot of retail investors think this is a good time to go long oil because it's quote unquote cheap. But then they don't realize the contango and the amount of money they're losing rolling every month. And of course, now everybody's aware of these ETFs and everybody pre-positions. And this is going to be with us for a few more months. The good thing is, USO, for instance, came out yesterday and said they're distributing the positions all the way through June 2021. So they are taking some action, but there's just way too much retail length at the front.
Amrita, I'm struggling to understand why the July WTI contract is more than $18 a barrel, given the fact that we're going to face the same issue come next month. What's going to change?
First and foremost, they are trying to distribute it. So, even for the May contract, for instance, 100% of their positions were there in May, whereas now they're distributing it. So it's more like 20%, and then they're distributing a further 20% down the curve and all the way through to June 2021. So the pressure will be less, even though there will be some pressure. Also, some of the ETFs have been forced to close out. A lot of the Bank of China products, for instance, that lost billions of dollars because of the WTI move to negative territory, they're no longer allowed to trade. So I think that helps. But also by July, physical fundamentals will be a lot better. Supplies have started to turn lower. Demand is starting to turn higher. We should start to see draws from June onwards. Of course, it doesn't mean we are anywhere close to rebalancing. That's going to take years. But at least we're moving in the right direction.
I guess I'm struggling to understand the idea of hope that continues in the oil markets, sort of idea, the hope that the supply-demand dynamic will get better and that oil prices will stabilize higher. Fitch Ratings put out a prediction yesterday saying that high-yield energy bond and loan defaults, that the rate will increase to 17% and 18% respectively with respect to bonds and loans. And this presumed nearly $30 a barrel type of pricing. Is this lowballing the potential defaults given where we are?
I would agree, and I think that's exactly why I don't think it's a hope in terms of the rebalancing. I think, we've been bearish all the way through. Even with the OPEC Plus cuts, we didn't think that would have been enough. But now we do see supplies are finally turning and turning faster, just as demand is going to start to recover again. No one is saying we're going to be in balance for a good 18 months to 2 years, but we are starting to see millions of barrels per day of production being shut in the U.S. Bankruptcies, as to your point, will be a lot higher than some of these estimates, because right now there's very few, if any, producers that are making any money at these prices.
Amrita, let's get out to 2021, early 2022. Talk to me about what that environment looks like off the back of a price shock that happened 18 months ago.
I think back end of 21 into 22 gets very interesting, because it's not just the supply losses that we are finally starting to see now. It's also the potentially semi-permanent losses to reservoirs that we see because of the shutdowns of the scale that we are going to see in the coming weeks. We've never seen this before. No country other than Saudi Arabia will probably come out of this unscathed, in the sense that they will lose some production on a permanent basis.
Okay, I want to know what the nations do, Amrita. I mean, this is all great, and you are so expert at supply, demand, et cetera, et cetera. They can't sustain Brent 20, Brent 24, Brent 28, whatever, versus their structure of fiscal and social demands. Which countries are you most following, not for the drama of collapse, but that just are going to be hugely challenged?
Nigeria, Iraq would be the two top ones for us. And yes, there's a lot written in the press about Saudi Arabia and Russia, but again, they do have reserves. They can get out and even raise capital if there need be, but they are at least better prepared. But for us, Nigeria, Russia for sure, and then Nigeria and Iraq for sure. And then, of course, there are a lot of the Latin American countries which we believe are very vulnerable to these prices.
Amrita, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Amrita Sen with us, and of course with the energy aspects, just extraordinary this morning. John, I want to get this in. I think it's so important, and that is Brazil is a tinderbox this morning. It's not, is it energy? Yeah, I guess it's energy. It's somewhat tangential to what Ms. Sen was talking about, but with the real out 5.66, I mean, Brazil is just extraordinarily interesting right now.
Tom, there have been massive questions that have been asked about the leadership of Bolsonaro in the last several months. I would say that has got even more intense over the last several weeks.
I mean, I know it's a Damien Sassar world, folks, but I urge you to read in a little bit on Brazil moving from idiosyncratic to maybe something more general. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, offering an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. As many as 250,000 guest workers seeking a green card in the U.S., about 200,000 of them on H-1B visas, could lose their legal status by the end of June, according to immigration experts. As many as 3/4 of H-1B visas go to people working in the technology industry. H-1B visas are tied to a specific location and employer who commits to paying the recipient a minimum salary, furloughing recipients, reducing their wages, and in some cases, just allowing them to work from home can violate visa requirements. Families that rely on those jobs for authorization to stay in the U.S. can include children who may have spent their entire lives here. One expert says the visa crisis is causing a catastrophe at a human and economic level. Lobbying group TechNet, whose members include Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, is part of a coalition of trade groups calling for relief for foreign-born workers. Have you noticed you're not seeing as many ads as you used to while surfing the internet these days? Over the past few months, there's been a noticeable drop in demand for digital advertising, and it comes after a decade of explosive growth in that segment of the economy. Like many of the economic effects of the coronavirus, it's anyone's guess when the trend might turn positive again. Two of the biggest online ad getters, Facebook and Google, may find themselves having to contend for the first time ever with shrinking revenues. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Let's get some news, some headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom. The White House issued a strategy to expand U.S. testing for the coronavirus, accelerating President Donald Trump's push to reopen the economy. The new guidance will help states build testing capacity developed with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Food and Drug Administration.
We are continuing to rapidly expand our capacity and confident that we have enough testing to begin reopening and the reopening process. We want to get our country open, and the testing is not going to be a problem at all.
Meanwhile, retailers, including Walmart and CVS, say they would open hundreds of new sites to provide tests. In the UK, the lockdown is helping to slow deaths from coronavirus. That's according to the government, which is urging residents to continue to stay at home. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans has more from London.
Scientists are drawing up options for easing movement restrictions, which are expected to be set out later this week. That's as the government plans safe ways to reboot the battered economy. Chancellor Rishi Sunak is mulling how to gradually unwind support for businesses. Chief Medical Officer Chris Whitty is warning the coming months are fraught with uncertainty. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
South Korean top officials say North Korea leader Kim Jong-un's absence from the public view may be in line with fears of the coronavirus. Pyongyang has scaled down major events, and Seoul is confident that there are no unusual signs regarding Kim's health. Meanwhile, President Trump says that he has a very good idea about Kim's condition, but would not elaborate. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Everybody being very delicate about what they do and do not know about the story in North Korea. And I would say, Tom, for very good reason as well. I'm not sure anyone wants to get out ahead of that one before finding out exactly what is going on.
I give great credit to Bloomberg. I think Bloomberg really showed some editorial leadership over the weekend, John, of just sifting out the speculation and the rumor from okay, what does anybody actually know?
A lot of speculation, a lot of rumor, not many headlines and not many hard stories to go on at the moment. Tom, you mentioned the FX market. Let's pick up there. Weaker dollar story through G10, weaker dollar story through EM, led by the South African rand improving, the Mexican peso as well. But you mentioned Brazil, and I think it's worth reflecting on how big some of these FX moves have been through 2020. We have had a 40% move, weaker Brazilian currency against the US dollar, 40%, Tom. That is huge.
And Lisa, what's so important here, even with Turkey and the reserve drawdown they're having and the shocks, they just pick up the swaps on dollar, where the Central Bank of the United States ends up being a proxy for their stability.
Yeah, Brazil is fighting a lot of different shocks, right? The oil shock, the commodity shock, and then it also has a political crisis on its hands. Just to give you a sense, though, Brazil does have a huge chest of currency reserves, and they have sold about $19 billion of reserves just in March, selling dollars to try to support their currency. And they have a lot more, but there's a question about how much they're willing to deploy at a time when they really need the money.
A question we can discuss a little bit later with Steve Englander, hopefully, of Standard Chartered. He'll be joining this program. In the equity market, here's the story for you. Nicely through 2,900 on the S&P 500. Futures, positive 35 points and up by 1.2%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Radio.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Michael Barr. The NBA plans to reopen team practice facilities Friday in areas where local governments have relaxed stay-at-home restrictions amid the coronavirus pandemic. That's according to an ESPN report. Dallas Mavericks team owner Mark Cuban says playing without fans is a made-for-TV event.
I mean, we're dying for content. We're dying for teams to root for. We're dying to get excited about games and just just ready to go and cheer as a community. And so, yes, I really think that if we're able to pull it off without fans, we're certainly going to do it.
Major League Baseball games this year with no fans in the stands. That could be on deck, according to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Be creative, try to figure it out. But if players could get paid more than staying home, and owners would get some revenue versus total shutdown, why not?
That is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Global News 24.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today, search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
We're all having to get used to the new normal. And at Birkbeck University, we're experts at being adaptable. As London's evening university, we've been flexing around the lives of busy commuters for nearly 200 years. And you can find everything you need to secure your place for autumn online. From expert advice to virtual tours, a live chat with our students and course applications. Make the new normal, studying for the career that you really want. Search Birkbeck, and it's new problem solved.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are higher. NYMEX crude oil falling. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 34 points. Dow futures up 317. NASDAQ futures up 94. 10-year Treasury up 2/32, yield 0.65%. Yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil is down almost 16%, down $2.01 at $10.76 a barrel. COMEX gold is little changed, up $1.20 at $17.25 an ounce. The euro 1.0886 against the dollar. The yen 106.62, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. The hope very much on the reopening of the economy, Tom. Governor Andrew Cuomo said there could be a case for reopening some regions of New York, at least, in May.
It is the Empire State, folks, and we have been thrilled to speak often on Bloomberg Surveillance with the Lieutenant Governor of the Empire State. Kathy Hochul joins us. Kathy, I picked up the Daily News this morning, and I just wanted to see it there. You know, New York dropped dead. I mean, that's, again, the tone 45 years on in Washington. The president saying to New York, drop dead. Explain to our audience, coast to coast, how New York contributes to the federal pot of money.
New York State, our residents contribute $29 billion more to the federal government to fund their operations more than we get back in services. And I am elected official now. I was formerly an attorney on the staff of Daniel Patrick Moynihan back in the 1980s. And he released this report every single year to show how New Yorkers subsidize the rest of the nation, and therefore made an argument that we should be able to get more money coming back to us. But now more than ever, you think about the fact that we have been the epicenter of this pandemic. We have had to incur more costs. We've had to, our businesses are hurting, and the federal government should look at that record, realize that states like Kentucky take more money than they put in, and we give more money. And so why are we even having this conversation? Give us the money now. We need your help.
Okay, to John Farrell's good question there on testing and where we are, where it's every state for himself. I'm looking out, Lieutenant Governor, on 2% of New York State people jogging around Central Park. I mean, 2% are going to get tested? That seems absurd.
Well, we want those testing rates to be much higher, and that's why when President Trump met with Governor Cuomo just exactly a week ago today, our governor made a very compelling case to say, okay, you say you don't want to have anything to do with testing. How about if we split it? New York State will run the testing, we'll do the collection sites, we'll gather the samples, we'll get out the results, but we don't have the components to do that testing. We don't have access to the international supply chain where reagents and vials and swabs are being manufactured in places like China. Can you help us, federal government, at least have a supply chain and a repository to send to states like New York so we can ramp up from 20,000 tests a day to over 40,000. That's exactly what we're striving for. So we can do better. We just don't have the reagents and other components to be able to do it. We want to do it. Absolutely. We think it's going to make a huge difference in people's sense of security as we start reopening the economy.
Lieutenant Governor, just fast forwarding beyond the testing and reopening, I'm wondering about the fate of New York City as a metropolitan center. I've read an increasing number of stories about businesses rethinking plans to open offices in the city and the possible exodus of families moving to the suburbs and beyond. How realistic is that? How big of a threat? How often do you talk about that?
We have been down and out before in New York City. You think about 9/11. And at the time, people said, why would any tourists ever come back here? Clearly, we were a terrorist target. Why would anyone want to live in Manhattan? We came back stronger, better, more vibrant than ever before. Hurricane Sandy wiped out, flooded the New York City subway system, creating and, wreaking havoc throughout Long Island. We know how to rebuild and rebuild stronger with more resiliency. So I believe that what we're tasked with right now is to reimagine a better New York City, a better New York State, and I'm involved with that with the governor as we speak.
And then Lieutenant Governor John Farrell moved here, top of the market.
It's almost really, isn't it, your input this morning after that serious suggestion from Kathy. Kathy, let me follow up on something important, please. How do you reopen in New York City if you're not aligned with New Jersey and neighboring states?
Good question.
We will be aligned. No, absolutely. This is something the governor initiated with our neighboring governors over a month ago. This tri-state coalition that expanded to 7 states where we don't want to do anything at odds with another neighboring state because there's so much synergy in that tri-state area in particular. People live in New Jersey, they work in New York, and vice versa. Same with Connecticut. So the governors have really been enlightened. I mean, this has not happened before, but it's been this incredible collaboration where we talk about the fact that if beaches open in one area, should they be open elsewhere? What about schools? What about transportation systems? What about opening up businesses? So I think New Yorkers and people living in that region should feel confident that there'll be intense coordination among our administrations to make sure that we're not working in cross purposes from each other. That doesn't accomplish anything. You open up the bars in Newark and not in New York City, people are going to go to Newark. I mean, let's understand human nature, and that just expands the spread if New York City is not ready to open. So that's why it's really important what they're doing, and that'll make the difference.
Well, I'm listening to what both states are saying at the moment, and Governor Cuomo's been quite clear about slowly looking at reopening some regions in New York in May. Governor Murphy of New Jersey essentially saying flat out that the stay-at-home order will remain in effect in its entirety until further notice. Are you saying there's no daylight between the two governors at the moment, Kathy?
I'm talking about regionally. New Jersey is in close proximity to New York City, the metropolitan area, which is not ready to open yet. And the governor talks about opening regionally. He's talking about something like Erie County, an area like Erie County, western New York, which is literally a 7-hour drive from New York City. So no one from New York City is going to hop into a facility and visit Erie County. It's just geographically doesn't make sense. So we're talking about the far reaches of the state that really have a dramatically lower number of positive cases, hospitalizations, and are more prepared to open up. And that's what I'm focusing on now as we speak. My focus designated by the governor a week ago when he came to Buffalo was to chart a reopening plan for the outside downstate areas, upstate New York and central New York, on a different timetable altogether.
Well, it is the Empire State. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining Bloomberg Surveillance this morning. John?
Great to catch up with the Lieutenant Governor on a regular basis to get the update on the reopening in New York. Let's get you some price action, shall we? Equity futures shaping up as follows this Tuesday morning. Equity futures advance 36 points, nicely through 2,900. We're up by 1.25% on the S&P 500, despite the fact the guidance from the companies on the S&P 500, well, let's be clear, there isn't much of any guidance at all. UPS pulling theirs. We've seen the likes of 3M, Xerox, PepsiCo do the same thing so far this morning. No guidance is the new guidance for the S&P 500. Very little clarity about the path ahead. The hope of things is driving this market a little bit more higher. In the bond market, yields down just a single basis point on a 10-year to 0.65% in foreign exchange. Weaker dollar against G10 and against the bulk of emerging markets as well. The focus for many of you, I'm sure, on the commodity market. Crude down another 17% on the June contract. WTI $10.60 from New York. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
Not completing high school is more of a social.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Oh. Just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The football boots that will help her score her first hat-trick. The tech that keeps you connected. The cosy jumpers that are perfect for snuggling up together. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Let's talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrell, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. Welcome coast to coast. Welcome worldwide to Up Markets. What you need to know right now is futures put it on earlier and continue to build, with futures up 38, Dow futures up 349, and the VIX in a solid 1.60 points. Risk on 31.69. John Farrell, what's the why this morning to higher market prices?
I think front and centre over the last several days, reopening the economy, Tom, that's where the focus seems to be. Certainly not corporate guidance, because we had no corporate guidance whatsoever this morning. PepsiCo, 3M, Xerox, UPS, all pulling their 2020 forecast so far this morning.
Many people, folks, talking about corporate guidance being not that important, earnings being not that important. And Lisa, they go right to your wheelhouse and say credit spreads matter. Are credit spreads better this morning?
Credit spreads have basically been flat. I mean, over the past few sessions, it really has just been basically a death line. Well, the reason why is it really goes right to the Federal Reserve. And I think that front and center behind the robustness of this market is the central bank activity. And we're going to hear from the Fed on Wednesday. And I'm very curious to hear any additional guidance on further asset purchases and also what the thresholds are for them to raise interest rates from zero.
Well, it's really important here to set up. We've got a wonderful must-listen global Wall Street guest coming up in moments. John Farrell, this is so important what Lisa mentions, and that part of the Fed international action are those swap lines which help beleaguered nations. There's a lot of beleagueredness out there this morning, isn't there?
Well, let's be clear. I think Lisa touches on the credit issue and you're touching on foreign exchange, and I think this is really important. A couple of months ago, there was real tension in this market. Liquidation, sell everything, reach for the dollar. The Fed has done a lot to alleviate some of those dislocations. Going forward from here, it's got to be about the fundamentals. When we reopen, how quickly can this economy normalize? Psychologically, how does a consumer respond? And what can the Federal Reserve do to assist that recovery? We're not at the point where we're talking about stimulus yet. Why stimulate an economy that's shut down? But when we reopen, it's the next stage of policy help that we need to reconfigure.
for Global Wall Street Now, a definitive conversation with Stephen Englander, the Standard Chartered Bank. Dr. Englander, thank you so much for joining us. There's so many things to talk about. I know John wants to pick this up and Lisa as well. Let me go to the piggy bank, to the fundamentals of running out of money. Turkey has reserves. Turkey has gold. Turkey has an off-the-cliff drop in reserves. Are we beginning to see countries run out of the piggy bank?
Well, I don't think we're seeing countries run out of the piggy bank. Global reserves are not down by that much. But what we've seen for a number of years is that countries prefer not to use their reserves if they can at all avoid it. It's viewed by the market often as a sign of weakness, and the commitment that you need if you're actually going to go in there with your reserves is bigger often than countries want to do. I think the other issue is for many countries that given the choice between conducting domestic monetary policy to ease and letting the currency drop, in the current situation, they're saying we're going to let the currency drop and try and get the economy going again.
Steve, Tom is pointing to this extreme action by the Federal Reserve, not just on a domestic sense, but also internationally. What is the world hoping to hear from the Federal Reserve tomorrow with regards to further expansions of the FX swap line, in addition to potential guidance as to when they may raise interest rates again, i.e. perhaps never, or whether they may expand asset purchases?
Well, look, I think expectations are dampened because, in part, the Fed has been making policy, in real time. So there's no, tomorrow is not a big moment in time. And even yesterday, they announced some extension of the municipal bond facility. But I do think that the Fed will try and convey that they're going to do what it takes, that they're not concerned about the pace of expansion of the balance sheet, and they want to try and stabilize financial markets as much as possible. I think external markets and currencies are more difficult. There's a limit to how much swaps they can do with poor credits. So far, they've limited it to pretty good credits in the emerging market world.
Steve, let's talk about what they can do in the credit market. I've heard from the likes of Oksana Aronoff of JP Morgan Asset Management in the last 24 hours, together with Dan Iverson of PIMCO, all asking the same question. The substance of the programs at the Fed, the reality of them. We've been trading the optics. They haven't bought a single high-yield credit as yet, and yet high-yield credit spreads have tightened aggressively. Have you got any idea how potent their participation will be in this particular space?
I think that they would love to avoid going too deeply into it and hoping the thing that they'll do what it takes is enough. I think at the end of the day, if you say, look, we're just going to stabilize the high-grade market, we're just going to stabilize treasury market, but we're going to let high yield twist in the wind, that could be a formula for markets going back into a very difficult situation. So I think at the end of the day, they will bite the bullet. They may get some support from Treasury in terms of taking an equity tranche here and taking the losses, but I think that if it's needed, they will go deeper into the high-yield market.
Is this about market functioning or market pricing, Steve? Are you clear on whether it's one or the other, or both?
Well, if they were convinced that they could get the market functioning without the market pricing, I think that they would be happy to let the market price. But I think that they view both as coming together. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to pick up on what John had to say. This sort of question implicit in there of moral hazard, right? This idea that a lot of traders are operating on the idea that the Federal Reserve will ultimately backstop pricing, not just market functionality, if things get bad enough. Do you think that is misguided?
Well, look, I think that if the market is functioning and if these firms are able to get credit and are able to carry on business, the Fed will be happy enough. I think if what we're seeing is a threatened wave of bankruptcies, I think the Fed shut its eyes, get some backstop from the Treasury and go ahead and do it.
Steve Englander, we all have our benchmarks in foreign exchange, whether it's Mexican peso, this, that, our favorites that we follow. Let me ask a really sophisticated question. How close are we to 1998?
I think if we get anywhere close to 1998, we're in real trouble because the Fed has been, and other central banks have been doing everything to avoid it. So that would suggest that we're throwing the kitchen sink at everything. They're still not able to avoid it. My guess is that we're not going to be there, but that the question of can all this monetary ease offset the economic headwinds that we're facing and will continue to face most likely even 6 months and 12 months down the road, that question is still very open.
Steve, what is the call on the dollar over at Standard Chartered right now?
Look, very short term, obviously we're seeing risk on and dollars selling off because it gained on the risk off scenario. We're concerned that we could get a second wave that could lead to, sort of a repeat perhaps of a smaller amplitude of what we saw in March. Ultimately, as long as we get to some sort of stabilization of market, there's been a lot of buying of dollars because of risk aversion and panic. And there's a lot of dollars getting thrown into the market. Any time that we have a sustained period in which markets are calm, dollar is likely to be under some pressure from these levels. Doesn't mean it's going to be 2002 to 2008.
I think to Tom's point, Steve, what he's thinking about with the late 90s is just the similarities to right now. Crude's absolutely plunging. EMFX has been in a nosedive as well over the last several months. And Tom, I've been wondering as well whether we've had that second wave in the markets in EM, whether we've had that EM shakeout the extent that we needed to off the back of everything that's happened.
Yeah, and this was so important here, Steve, just to squeeze in a little more here. I mean, we had Stan Fisher at the IMF at the time, and there were a lot of things that surprised us. What's the thing we can't see right now, Dr. Englander, that surprises you?
I think that the issue of how much structural change we're going to face, I think for those of us of a certain age, the way the world changed.
See how he does that, John?
The way the world changed after 1973, when we had the first oil shock and all this oil-intensive activity that we've been growing off disappeared, I think that the question of, how are we going to deal with all the people who've been hired over the last 10 years, basically who are engaged in face-to-face service provision, whether in retail or in services, many of them will have to move to other jobs, and how that interacts with the financial system, I think, and sort of public finance and monetary policy is going to be the question for the next 5 years.
Steve's allowed back. Stephen Englander of Standard Chartered weighing in on the FX market and the Fed. Let's get some news, some headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr. Hey, Michael.
Hey, John, Lisa, Tom. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says it might be time to consider a guaranteed income for Americans when it comes to a new coronavirus relief package. Pelosi insists that the next bill must provide aid to state and local governments to pay police, fire, and other frontline heroes. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell counters that his priority is to shield business owners from onerous laws. The leaders announced Congress will return May 4th, but some lawmakers are being warned that full operations may not be able to resume for a year. Governors in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania are banding together in fighting the coronavirus, but a tax loophole could soon strain relations. Bloomberg's John Tucker has the story.
A little notice provision in New York's tax law could leave billions of dollars in tax revenue up for grabs. It says anybody who works out of an office in New York but lives out of state must pay New York income tax. There is one exception: when work from home is a necessity. Because of government-ordered lockdowns, people may have a clear case for allocating their income during this time to their home state. Non-residents account for almost $700 million a month of New York's income tax revenue. John Tucker, Bloomberg Radio.
In Texas, the governor is allowing the limited reopening of restaurants, bars, and movie theaters on Friday. The governor is not requiring employees or their patrons to wear masks to protect against the spread of the coronavirus. In neighboring New Mexico, Governor Grisham is maintaining the public health shutdown, but in Grants, Mayor Martin Hicks has ordered the town of about 9,000 to reopen. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Michael Barr with the latest news headlines worldwide. Here's your price action this Tuesday morning. Tom, we advance. We are comfortably through 2,900. We're up another 1%. There is a ton of hope out there that as the months roll on, as the year grows older, the outlook gets a little bit better.
Really back to a bear market. I've got that chart, John, of correction in bear market. Of course, we plunged way below a bear market metric, and we've really come back to that from the peak down, 16, 18% or so. It's been a remarkable recovery.
Treasuries really well behaved in this environment. Off the lows in the equity market, Lisa, not much movement higher on 10-year Treasury yield, 0.65%, down a basis point actually in today's session.
Again, it goes to the sort of question of the Federal Reserve buying, right? I mean, you've talked about projections showing that the Federal Reserve is going to net be purchasing more than the U.S. Treasury Department is issuing with respect to treasuries. It just raises a question, is this a free market at this point? How controlled is this by the central bank? And what's the point of betting against them?
No is the answer. If central bank buying is outpacing issuance, then I think we've got a bit of an issue when it comes to free markets and pricing, don't we?
Agreed.
Your yields unchanged today. Your equity market advances up 36 points, up 1.25% through 2,900. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. Big week ahead. The Fed tomorrow, the ECB on Thursday, and a ton of tech earnings in and around those central bank decisions as well. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has ignored a call on purpose? Tick. Talked yourself out of a workout? Tick. Spent far too long scrolling on your phone? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. And U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathers pace. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are up 36 points. Dow futures up 358. NASDAQ futures up 91. The DAX in Germany is up 1.7%. The 10-year Treasury up 3/32, yield 0.64%. Yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil falling, down almost 12%. On $1.51 at $11.28 a barrel. And COMEX gold little change at $17.2350 an ounce. The euro 1.0877 against the dollar. The yen at 106.71. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. News out of Europe this morning. Banks getting a break on leverage limits. The so-called leverage ratio will be relaxed under an EU proposal announced today. We are lucky on this program to have an exclusive interview with the European Commission Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis. Valdis, always great to catch up with you, sir. Let's talk about it. Why did you make this decision this morning?
Indeed, European economy, as economies across the world are hit by the coronavirus crisis, and we need to come with also economic response to this crisis, because vast majority, if not all, EU member states will experience severe recession this year. So we need to provide necessary stimulus to the economy. We are doing this through major stimulus, fiscal stimulus, relaxing our state aid rules, monetary stimulus, but we are also looking at our banking sector rules, so utilizing existing flexibility in our prudential rules, and also coming with targeted amendments on the capital requirements regulation to facilitate bank lending capacity to the real economy. So basically what we are doing, to the large extent, we are following the decision of the Basel Committee to postpone implementation of so-called Basel III rules by 1 year. For example, you mentioned specifically a leverage ratio. This is exactly one of the decisions that we are following up Basel.
We all want banks to be able to finance the economy. There'll be people listening to this program right now, though, wondering why we want risky European lenders to be holding less capital. What's the answer to that?
Well, first of all, we are not proposing that banks are holding less capital, because when we discuss finalization of Basel III, there were additional requirements which were agreed internationally, which were to gradually set in. And what Basel Committee has decided internationally is now to postpone the introduction of those additional requirements. And by the way, United States are also taking advantage of this Basel decision. So from that point of view, it's a part of coordinated international response.
Mr. Dombrovskis, we're honored that you're with us today. John and I love seeing you in Davos and at IMF meetings and such. I'm absolutely fascinated when you, with your heritage of leadership in Europe, believe we will finally see bank consolidation. Your job is extremely difficult. Madame Lagarde's job is extremely difficult, and the only solution is a consolidation within countries and a consolidation across borders. When will we begin to see that?
Well, actually, this is a process which we are already seeing, that if you look across EU member states, we see this process of banking sector consolidation gradually happening. Not that it's some kind of, regulatory aim of the European Commission to force bank mergers, but I would say also the additional prudential rules which had been introduced internationally and which we are implementing in Europe are facilitating this, and we are gradually seeing also this process of bank sector consolidation. Unfortunately, in Europe we saw also another process of banking sector, banking lending, banking activities becoming more national, so less pan-European, and there we want to counter this tendency, so we want to have a banking sector which is across active across the EU, and the same goes with the capital market sector. That's, for example, why we are now working on our next stage of our capital markets union project.
The answer is often more Europe. It's intriguing to me that when it comes to the debt, the answer is never more Europe. The north of Europe, the Netherlands and the like, do not want debt mutualization. There are many people outside of Europe looking right now at European officials getting together and trying to come up with a plan to offset the pain in the European economy. Valdis, help me understand that, help our audience understand that, why we are still no closer to shared debt in the Eurozone.
First of all, it's worth noting that already with the measures which have been taken in Europe, we already have provided a response, fiscal response, liquidity support of the scale of 3.4 trillion euros. This is the EU's largest ever response to the crisis. So this is something which is already done.
But Vladis, this is so important. Vladis, this is so important what John brings up, and I know you've done 3 trillion as well. Our American audience wants to know what you and Klaus Regling believe will be the mutualization of debt in Europe. Do you have any optimism that could occur?
Well, actually, what I was referring now is immediate crisis response. Currently, we are working on the EU's recovery plan, which will be based on ambitious EU budget for the next 7 years, so-called multi-annual financial framework, and we will come with a, so to say, classical EU multi-annual budget, and there will be additional recovery fund which we propose, which among other things will be financed by the joint borrowing through the European Commission in financial markets. So we'll be raising financing jointly at the European level to finance our European response to the crisis and to finance economic recovery.
Valdis, we've got to leave it there. We wish you the best. We wish Europe the best, of course. Valdis Dombrovskis, European Commission Vice President. Tom, just touching on some of the difficulties on the continent.
I can't convey folks in America how important that interview was for the linkage of coming out of this crisis, John. This mutualization issue is, can Europe be more like America? I see no indication it can.
I agree with you, Tom. Equity futures this morning up 39. We advance on the S&P 500, positive 1.37% on the S&P through 2,900, quite comfortably. Big tech in focus, and the data too. More still ahead, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others, make a difference. Today, search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio, 60 minutes away from the opening bell. Equity futures up by 39 points and positive 1.4%. With the data, the economic data in the United States of America, here is Vinny Giudice.
Good morning, John, Tom, and Lisa. Let's start with trade. Merchandise trade March, the deficit widening to $64.2 billion. That's a $5 billion widening. Where do we go from here with the coronavirus? Well, here's a story on the Bloomberg quoting the CEO of United Parcel Service, says it's been like turning off the light switches. On that note, wholesale inventories down, retail inventories with stores shut up. 10 o'clock Wall Street time, consumer confidence, economists looking for historic drop in the Conference Board report. I'm Vinny Giudice, Bloomberg Radio. Let's go back to New York.
Vinny, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. The data's still ahead this week. There's a lot of it. The Federal Reserve decision tomorrow. We'll get first quarter GDP in the United States as well. Your first quarter GDP estimate at the moment, negative 3.9%. First quarter annualized GDP. That will be your first read for the data out of the United States of America for the first quarter on the GDP front. A little bit later in the week, of course, claims come on Thursday. Then on Friday, we get an ISM. I said it yesterday, Tom, just a reminder. This month in May, your payrolls report won't come on the 1st. It will come on the 8th, so next Friday.
I mean, just the basic, folks, we just take it for granted, but that first quarter ended March, and you can get out your coronavirus calendar to see how that negative 3% number John was talking about folds into March, and then how you stagger over to the beginning of the second quarter in this April. Diane Swak joins from Grant Thornton. She has been hugely valuable in our coverage of the monetary experiment known as the Federal Reserve. Diane, thank you so much for joining us. What's the theory of this Fed right now as we begin to get ready for an original Fed meeting? Remember the Phillips curve, Diane? I believe we remember things like that. What's the underlying theory right now?
Well, I think the Fed is trying to do everything they can to deal with an economy that's been hit like a meteor, like from outer space, and knocked the entire globe off its axis. The Fed really does treat this more than any other institution I've seen out there as an external shock, one that is not tied to bad lending and bad decisions prior to, but it has huge economic consequences, and it's willing to play a role in lender of all sorts, I say, instead of just
I like
last
that.
resort.
I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, because it wants to sort of be out there and provide a backstop wherever possible. The problem is the Fed is really limited, not in the ways we once thought, because, boy, have they surprised us and humbled us in their ability to think outside the box. But they are still a lender, not a spender. That's what Congress does. And for those companies and individuals needing actual direct aid, that's not something the Fed can do. They can only lend their way through this, which means more debt. They can't give grants and things like that, which many are in need of at this stage of the game.
Diane, the lender of last resort, the Fed has basically ridden this wave of hope and expectation that they will continue to do whatever it takes to either prop up valuations or smooth out market functioning, depending on how you want to look at this. How important is it that the Federal Reserve clarifies just how willing it is to, say, delve into equities or go further into junk bonds?
That is important. I think, the issue on junk bonds has already raised some eyebrows, and I think, the issue here is the fallen angels and how do we deal with those. But it's very important that the Fed also draws some lines in the boundaries of what they're willing to do. And I think you see right now the perceptions of the Fed, even though they're doing whatever it takes for as long as it takes, which is really important on their forward guidance as well, to say they're not going to pull this too soon and pull the plug on the economy and let it fail. That's really important. But the other side is it's fed into, I think, something you're alluding to, and that is the break between the economy and the stock market and the valuations we see in equity prices versus the real economy and how much it really is suffering, not being reflected as sort of the investors in the stock market appear to be whistling by the graveyard of coronavirus.
And we've seen people sort of call the Fed out for being too vague in sort of describing how far they're willing to go. The latest criticism actually comes from two New York Fed officials, former New York Fed officials, including Simon Potter, who famously was on the markets desk, where they basically are saying their March 15th statement was too vague and that they should really demonstrate what the parameters are for them to raise rates or to, on the contrary, inject additional stimulus into the economy.
That is something we're starting to hear, and I think it's a valid issue, and that is because the Fed has said we'll do whatever it takes for however long it takes, and the Fed has surprised us on how far they're willing to venture into places they've never gone before. That has left markets speculating on things that perhaps are not most productive and really caused this wedge. So I do think it would be useful. On forward guidance, I think we got to give the Fed some leeway here. They can't just say we're going to do this for the next 2 years. They could say we're going to do this at least for the next 2 years until the economy gets to its previous highs in terms of economic activity or inflation were to heat up instead of cool off. They could put parameters on it like that, but I do think you're right that they need to be much more explicit about what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do. I don't think we're going to get all the answers from this meeting.
Well, let's sit on that just for a little bit more, shall we? Forward guidance, the kind of forward guidance we could get from them. What would you recommend, Diane? Would it be time contingent forward guidance or would it be data contingent?
I think it's got to be data contingent because time contingent, as we found in the past, can be wrong. And that's one of the things the Fed learned during the expansion was, as they said, well, we'll keep this on until the next year or the next 2 years. That in and of itself was not enough. You needed to say you're listening to data dependence. Remember how that emerged as a much more important verbiage regarding forward guidance. And so I think you've really got to see a Fed that's willing to commit to getting us through this period without it becoming a deeper recession and a Great Depression.
I'm trying to figure out if Arthur Burns' smoke rings from his pipe were data or time dependent. I can't remember which they were. Diane, all this is great, and all of this is painless. And to go back to the guy named Schumpeter and creative destruction, when do we have the price of capitalism, where you have an exogenous shock like this? And things happen like combinations from the 30s. When do we see American industry combine out of a crisis?
Actually, I think we're going to see the biggest consolidation we've ever seen out of this crisis, and I don't think it's as painless as you are sort of letting it look and appear, and perhaps the Fed needs to clarify that. One of the things the Fed can't do is lend and lose money, and Treasury is also being held accountable not to lose money with the collateral it's providing for the Federal Reserve. That means the Fed and Treasury are likely to actually err on the side of being more conservative than many would like, and importantly, than is necessary for an economy that's been hit by such an external shock, and more firms will fail, and we'll see more consolidation. That's becoming the sort of view. We'll see a lot more consolidation and mergers and acquisitions out of this, which means more power in a few companies on the other side.
Exactly. That's right where I wanted to go. That was a brilliant answer, Ms. Swank. I want to go to that word power. Who controls the power of consolidation? Is it going to be government mandated? Is it going to be tycoon mandated? Is it going to be board of directors mandated? Who drives the ship forward?
Well, given that the lenders are out there and going to be more conservative and I don't want to make losses, I think, the lenders, both in the Fed and the Treasury, are going to have a huge say in this. Also, the banks and the oversight that's provided to them. So even though they've gone into more risky areas than they have in the past, this also is hitting much more of the economy than they have in the past. And so it does look like this will be a collective effort of companies that have good balance sheets being able to weather the storm and eat up companies that don't. And on the other side of it, you're going to see the consolidation also triggered by not companies that can't get access to lending and can't stay alive. So this isn't the same as what we talked about before, and I think that's something we really have to think about. The other side of this, the new economy, the new normal, is going to be similar but not the same, and different in very important ways in terms of market power.
Well, Dan, let's talk about it, the debt. Let's think about it in two phases. The first phase was about access to the debt. Who can get access to the bridge to the other side? That often involves debt. The second phase is going to be about the debt itself. There's going to be a lot of companies that come out of this, if they survive, with a lot more debt. What does that mean for the trajectory of this recovery?
That's going to be an interesting issue, and it really depends on the Fed's willingness to keep interest rates low and make the servicing of that debt very easy, and how much we're willing to restructure the debt to make it over a long period of time and easy to absorb. And I think that's going to be one of the key determinants on the other side of this, is how long people worry about the term extend and pretend. I think we did that a lot during the expansion. Going forward, I think we're also going to see very low interest rates for a very long time. The Fed's fear right now is deflation, not inflation. That means they'd like to see things reflate in the economy, and that means keeping rates lower for much longer, and even other things we haven't talked about, controlling the yield curve as well.
Dan, always great to get your thoughts. Dan Swank there of Grant Thornton, the chief economist, joining us on the latest. Let's get you some news, some headlines worldwide, shall we? Here is Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom, President Trump's new coronavirus testing plan is designed to help states reopen their economy soon. But as we hear from Bloomberg's Martin DeCaro, the new plan may not fix a persistent problem.
The states will still have the primary responsibility to obtain the tests.
Governors across our country are literally competing for supplies.
Virginia Governor Ralph Northam says while his state's been able to double testing capacity to 4,000 a day, it's still well short of its goal of 10,000. But the Trump administration is not aiming for comprehensive surveillance testing, what public health experts say is necessary to reopen safely.
The testing is not going to be a problem at all.
There have been more than 5 million COVID tests in the U.S., or about 1.5% of the population. The administration's new plan supposed to give states the ability to test at least 2% of their residents every month. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
The coronavirus pandemic is causing Americans to worry more about their finances than health, according to a new study by MetLife. The largest U.S. life insurer says money was the top concern for 52% of full-time U.S. workers, compared with 44% who were most anxious about physical and mental health. The first major test of an almost completely vote-by-mail election during a pandemic is about to unfold in Ohio. Today's primary also could provide a preview of a November election that might still be marred by the coronavirus outbreak. Joe Biden has all but locked up the Democratic presidential nomination since the state's March 17th primary was delayed. Instead, the spotlight has shifted to the process. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barster, thank you. Thank you very much. This equity market is looking good if you're long. We are up by 40 points on the S&P 500, positive by 1.38%. Mild risk on, risk appetite improving once again. It yields lower still by 2 basis points to 0.64%. A curious move in the bond market, giving the improving risk appetite elsewhere. In the commodity market, we give up some of the losses of the morning on WTI. WTI crude, $11.54. The earnings very much in focus. I know I sound like a broken record, but they are the big five, the big tech companies reporting. Alphabet, Google, as you say, Tom, coming after the close a little bit later today. The tech companies report in an environment where nobody is providing any guidance at all. We had UPS, Xerox, PepsiCo, and others this morning. 3M too, pulling guidance, providing no forecast for the road ahead.
I will say that Apple, however, has postponed the delivery of its latest model of the iPhone, and that's not being viewed as necessarily that negative, but the guidance that we are getting indicates that it's going to take a while for people to get back on the ground when it comes to actually spending.
I wonder, guys, and I really wonder, like the banks, John, where they're spinning a PR message, if the tech companies almost have to spin a message, not of woe is me, but their understanding of how difficult this economy is, and almost apologize for how well they're doing.
I agree.
It'd be interesting to see.
I agree. There's a huge PR effort going on, Tom. Let me tell you, when we reopen and these multinationals don't have to worry about the PR effort, I just wonder how they look at the payroll coming out the other side of this. No one wants to see that happen, but you can see it happening, particularly at the big banks. There's a lot of people who are going to have to right-size the business that do not want to do that while things have shut down. When things reopen as we go into 2021, different story, I'm afraid. From New York City this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg Radio.
This is your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini. The mortgage industry in chaos with landlords and lenders on pins and needles as that May 1st rent payment day approaches.
When cash flow stops, you have a problem.
And Tom Barrick, CEO of Colony Capital, says the sudden disruption shocked the massive and once thriving market.
For most of the $33 trillion in North American residential, we've lived the Goldilocks era, right? For 10 years, 2010, it's been 46% home price appreciation. It's gone.
Black Knight says at least 6% of homeowners are already skipping mortgage payments legally because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Barrick says if more isn't done to help bondholders, mutual fund and ETF investors and pension funds could really be hurt.
Right now, we have to save the patient. And it's going to be complicated. There's going to be a lot of turmoil. There's going to be a lot of agony. And it's going to be fits and starts. This market isn't going to recover fast. It will recover, but not fast.
And that's your Bloomberg Real Estate Report. I'm Denise Pellegrini.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Connecting decision makers to a network of news.
Coming soon, Ricochet, the new action film written by, directed, and starring Euro Millions winner Timothy Barker, with music by Timothy Barker.
Tonight's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £28 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Play online or on the app. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5 and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Another day inside? I've turned my place into a gymnasium. I'm using the stairs for lunging and the washing machine as a power plate. But if you'd rather shed pounds off your outgoings, take a few minutes to check your bank account for any unwanted direct debits. It's just another small step towards money calm. Money Supermarket.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are rising alongside European shares as governments contemplate reopening their economies and the earnings season gathers pace. Crude oil is lower. The dollar is weakening. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, S&P futures are up 40 points. Dow futures up 394. NASDAQ futures up 92. The 10-year Treasury is up 7/32. The yield 0.63%. The yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil is down 10%, down $1.27 at $11.51 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.25% or $3.70 at $17.27.50 an ounce. The euro 1.0883 against the dollar. British pound 1.2498 and the yen at 106.60. Caterpillar shelving its traditional earnings forecast for the rest of the year while warning the second quarter will be more impacted by the coronavirus than the first. Merck reported adjusted earnings per share that beat analyst estimates, so it said it's temporarily suspending its share buyback program. And PepsiCo's earnings per share beat analyst estimates while the drinks maker joined the list of companies withdrawing 2020 forecasts. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Lisa.
Karen, thanks so much. We have done so many different stories of this great pandemic, and we thank all of the medical professionals we've dealt with worldwide. At the Johns Hopkins University and at their hospital is someone who is not so much expert on infectious diseases or virology, but expert on the people that do this every day, and that, of course, is the nurses. Nisa Ernst is with Johns Hopkins, and here's our conversation with Ms. Ernst on the state of nursing.
There's been a tremendous response throughout our health system, as well as many other health systems, to really get out and aggressively test the community and follow some of the ideas that we've learned from the other areas of the world that have been tackling coronavirus.
Nisa, there have been a number of reports, about ventilators, the use of ventilators, whether they're good or not. One of the things that's also come in Europe is the fact that actually, because there's a shortage of frontline medical workers, that you're retraining others to try and do these very difficult procedures at times. How is that going?
That is very interesting. It's actually going very well. It was very difficult in the beginning. The profession of medicine is very protocolized, and it's not necessarily very agile. So you would have to change not only your skill set, but your mindset in order to provide the safest, highest quality patient care. You bring up a really good topic. We have what we call proning teams. We have found that proning, which is a physical maneuver that's very common I'm in endoscopy. We do it all the time with patients that are sedated in order to get them more oxygenation. And we found that by proning patients early and often, we reduce the use of ventilators in a lot of our patient care areas.
You're one of the rarest things out there. You were out in the real world doing terrible jobs, and then you finally got a real job in nursing along in your career with Sheraton, Johnson & Johnson, and others. I want you to talk about the nursing profession now. How are nurses as an industry going to come out of this pandemic? They've got to be changed after what we've all observed. Where will nursing be in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years?
That's a great question, and I was actually thinking about that when I was driving in. You're right. I have a business background. I came into nursing as a second career. One of the things that this pandemic is showing us is that nurses are going to take a very different role 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down. Nursing is what I call very silent work. No one really knows what we do. And I think this pandemic has shown the world what we do and what we do well. Nurses are incredibly innovative and creative, and they're also very, very good at maintaining high-quality patient safety standards.
Yeah, but when do they get respect within the system? And I'm not only talking about nursing folks, I'm talking about the interns, the residents, the people in the trenches of these hospitals. It seems like, am I right, they're the last ones to get paid? When does that change?
You know, I can't answer the pay question. I can tell you what is interesting here, and I'm speaking specifically for Hopkins. One of the things that Hopkins has done is recognize and honor every employee in this organization who comes in every day to provide some type of care, either direct patient care or indirect patient care. One of the other things that this pandemic has shown us is that, you know, we're a big institution. We're no different than a lot of other healthcare institutions. We're big, we're lumbering. It takes us years to make a decision. This pandemic has shown us that you're right. There are people right at the front line who make excellent decisions in a very short period of time that make a huge difference in a patient's outcome.
Lisa Ernst, the Johns Hopkins University. That has been a joy to speak to some of their officials each and every day. Lisa Abramowitz and Tom Keene with Futures Lifted. Lisa, I love what you did in drawing my attention to this story off our China desk this morning. And this is a great, great study. I don't pretend to be expert on it. SARS versus the coronavirus. And it's a mystery, isn't it?
Well, basically, people saw SARS disappear because the people who contracted the virus tended to manifest really severe symptoms and were able to be isolated, and it didn't spread as quickly or easily as the coronavirus that we're dealing with now. Basically, Chinese scientists believe that this coronavirus is going to be with us for the long term, that we're going to have it come back in waves, just like we see the influenza, which really raises a question going forward, especially before we get that vaccine, which is how do we deal with this in a way that's sustainable over a longer term?
Well, yeah, and then, of course, there's the age distribution, too, of so many old people really, really pounded by this virus. But, you know, to my mind, Lisa, it's so many unknown unknowns. You know, we're flying a lot more blind here than we thought we were. I guess we're less blind than February 25th, but not much.
But not much. I mean, we don't have a sense of how long the particles remain in the air, how quickly it spreads from person to person, whether or not it will drop off in terms of the numbers of cases come the heat of the summer in the Western world. A lot of questions here. And as we look at this, they're trying to expedite the vaccine testing, but this process typically takes years, like decades. And yet, so we're not expecting it in short order.
Well, we saw the constructive article out of Oxford University today on their moving their vaccine process forward. And I know Peter Hotez at Baylor University is leading another charge there as well. On the markets, Lisa, it's just absolutely remarkable to me to see not so much a certitude of gloom, but 0, 0, up, up, up. And yet that's what the market does, always confounding.
I guess fear of missing out is kind of outweighing fear of the unknown, right? I mean, because right now the unknown is all we have, and yet people are worried about missing this rally given the amount of stimulus that we're seeing from around the world.
Yeah, we'll have to see what we've got, folks. Let's frame it right now in a loose way here, because it was sort of a non-news day, and then it became very interesting. Quickly, equities up, as I said, with the VIX in under 32 is a huge deal, really denoting the optimism. Dow over 24,000. Yields have a life of their own, a little bit lower yields. I don't want to make too much of that. But what I'd really point you to is the shock and awe of West Texas Intermediate once again hammered, and even Brent crude for a good while under $19 a barrel. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who see.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Okay, people, I've got the daily checklist. Who today has eaten dinner for breakfast? Tick. Started a chore you'll never finish? Tick. Done a conference call in your pajamas? Tick. Here's another for your list. BritBox. Streaming the BBC, ITV, Channel 5, and now Channel 4. All in one place and ad-free. So add BritBox to your list and get a 30-day free trial of the biggest box of British box sets. Search BritBox free trial. Tick. Biggest compared to other SVOD providers. Auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless cancelled. T's and C's apply.
Right now at the Halifax, wherever we're working from, we're all working together to be there for you.
So our customers can apply for a payment holiday on mortgages, loans or credit cards.
And because we want you to stay home and stay safe.
We've created step-by-step guides to help you set up online and mobile banking.
Which is safer and easier than you may think.
But for those that really need to see us in person, we're keeping as many branches open as possible.
So however you need us at the Halifax,
we're here to help. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, go to halifax.co.uk.
The Woj Pod with Adrian Wojnarowski.
Doris, you had reason to believe that you needed to get a test for the coronavirus.
Right. Well, let's just start with the headline, which is I did test positive for COVID-19. I was so tired from Saturday the 14th through Tuesday, March 17th. I kid you not, I could not be out of bed for 5 minutes without needing to go back to bed and lay down.
Search the Woj Pod to listen.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor to a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn.
To help make the most of your time at home, TuneIn is sharing our top activities for social distancing. Tip number 4, relax. Don't feel like you have to be productive during these stressful days? This is the perfect time to focus on yourself. Whether that means meditating, taking a bath, sleeping in, or doing nothing at all, take a deep breath and treat yourself. For more indoor inspiration, search Listen from Home on TuneIn.
In a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, Bloomberg Surveillance. We welcome all of you coast to coast, listening in your homes on all of our digital product, including Bloomberg.com. We welcome Washington, Boston, San Francisco in an early morning. Good morning, Bloomberg 960, the Bay Area. And here in a beautiful New York today, cold but getting warmer, finally, New York City, Bloomberg 1130. Good morning as well. We've got lots to talk about. First, though, Bloomberg Surveillance, as always, brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. Cohn Resnick can help your business mitigate disruption and mobilize for the future. Visit their coronavirus resource center today, cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. Paul, you are expert in walls of worry. We're climbing walls of worry today, aren't we?
We are, once again, Tom. I mean, I think, I was just listening to you and Lisa and John in the prior hour here. I mean, there's so much economic uncertainty out there, but as Lisa suggested, maybe a little bit of the fear of missing out. And, there's certainly no getting around the fact that, central banks around the world are pulling out all the stops to keep financial markets humming.
We will have to see. With our individual stock report, as he dives into 600 of the S&P 500 reporting this week, one David Wilson. Where do you start, David?
I'm going to start by talking about the Dow companies that have reported, the ones in the Dow Jones Industrial Average. There are 4 of them, and we see a contrast in 2 of the averages drug makers. Pfizer's up 2.5% in early trading. They reaffirmed annual forecast after reporting first quarter earnings and revenue that beat analyst average estimates in Bloomberg survey. Contrast that with Merck, which is down 2.5%. The drug maker lowered this year's earnings and sales projections in response to the coronavirus. Merck's results for the first quarter surpassed estimates. So definite contrast there. 3M's up 4.5%. The maker of medical masks and a whole lot of other products posted first quarter profit and sales that exceeded estimates. And Caterpillar, little change at the moment.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, the construction and mining equipment maker predicted this quarter will be more significantly impacted by the coronavirus than last quarter was, so which may well be true for a lot of companies as we go forward here. You're seeing the automakers higher. General Motors up 3%, Ford up 6.5%, Fiat Chrysler up 4%. Now, Dow Jones is reporting that they're aiming to restart some U.S. production on May 18th. That's according to unidentified people familiar with the matter. The timeline depends on a workers' safety agreement with the United Auto Workers Union. Going back to earnings, you've got United Parcel Service down 4%. UPS, the package delivery company, had a smaller first quarter profit than analysts expected. UPS said it's cutting this year's capital spending by about $1 billion. PepsiCo's up 2%. The soft drink and snack maker had first quarter earnings that beat projections. Cummins, the engine maker, up 7%. Profit and revenue for the first quarter beat estimates. D.R. Horton, the home builder, up 7% as well. Fiscal second quarter results topping projections there. You're seeing the medical testing companies move higher for a 5th straight day on the prospect that business will benefit from COVID-19 tests. Laboratory Corp of America, a.k.a. LabCorp, up 7.5%. Quest Diagnostics up 7%. Harley-Davidson's up 7%. The motorcycle maker is in talks to line up $1.3 billion in bank financing and expects to raise more money by selling securities. Harley's worldwide retail sales dropped 18% in the first quarter. Also watching Southwest Airlines. Not a whole lot of change in early trading. Actually, it's turned higher now, up 1.5%. The carrier is selling the equivalent of a 12% stake to raise $1.6 billion at yesterday's closing price. And Southwest raising another $1 billion through a sale of convertible bonds.
Interesting. David Wilson, thank you so much. Really look forward to the reporting through the week and into next week as well. We've had important conversations today. The most important conversation today on oil. The most important conversation today on the Brazilian real.